playing MMOs in the early to mid 2010s, one website has caused more disappointment than any other. Kickstarter. Whether it's scams or overly ambitious projects with infinite scope creep, you give either your money, your excitement, or both, and what you get in return is shafted. At some point, players stopped having any excitement left to give, and the entire concept of a perpetually unreleased Kickstarter MMO died. I'm just kidding. Like with any sludge pit, gems exist, of course. But I have never seen a game wrestle its way out of the endless pit of glorp as hard as Gloria Victis. This story didn't start with Gloria Victis. It goes all the way back to a game called Ether Fields. Ether Fields was an MMO with a fairly interesting concept. A decently normal medieval overworld with not much fantasy, and as the name suggests, a separate spirit world. Despite gaining some kind of attention in the MMO world at the time, the game is almost ungoogleable now, and trying to Google it mostly just gets you an unrelated board game. So what happened? Well, the development was actually going really quite well, but at some point, part of the team felt like it was going too slow. You see, Ether Fields was being developed on the Baroque engine, which was being made by one guy. One person working on the engine, also being the one person that knows how to use it well, doesn't exactly speed up development. And despite the bad reputation at the time, the team wanted to switch to Unity. And just like that, Ether Fields fell apart and stopped development. And eventually, Ether Fields pieces were put back together into something different. How did the project start around 2009 after Ether Fields?
I believe all team members don't really feel that the project started as Ether Fields. It was a completely different game. GV and Ether Fields didn't share a single model or line of code. It is true that when Ether Fields collapsed, Gloria Victis arose. But the projects didn't share anything design-wise, code-wise, or asset-wise, besides a few soundtrack pieces I composed myself.
I did actually find a couple of things that the game had in common, like this armor and some art, but mostly it was actually a completely separate game. Gloria Victis did start with Ether Fields, but it's not a continuation. The entire concept of a spirit world was scrapped, and the game wanted to go for pure low fantasy medieval. Two factions, Midland being the classic European knights, and Izmir being the Viking faction. Skill-based PvP with territory control of static forts and castles, player-driven economy, and deep crafting. Many promises I'm sure you've heard before. The game used to have so many in-depth planned RPG features. What was the point in time where you realized you were in way over your head and had to cut down on the scope?
We released the first playable version very early and continuously watched how players played and what feedback they gave. For example, requests for housing or a much larger map, which would justify implementing sailing, never appeared among the top player demands. Therefore, we kept postponing those features. Gloria Victis was a game shaped by its players. All designers and testers were recruited from the community. It was also a living game, updated weekly, meaning we focused on reactive updates based on what the community needed at the moment.
The game tried to launch on Kickstarter and earned some good money, but fell far short of its goal. Despite that, the game launched soon after into a playable, albeit janky and laggy state. The game could be bought through PayPal donations, which is something that I have yet to see anywhere else, to be honest. But let's talk about the elephant in the room. A Kickstarter MMO with PvP, deep crafting, player-driven economy, classless progression, and even boats. It sounds almost goofy today, but only one of these things actually wouldn't make it into the game. And it's the goddamn boats. It didn't sound good at the time, but as long as Black Eye Games would keep pushing, there was a very small chance. But as much as I love this game, at this point in time, it just wasn't really good enough yet. That, combined with the lack of any real distribution platform, really put the pressure on Black Eye Games to do something. That something was Steam Greenlight, which was almost immediately approved, and the game was available on Steam fucking 2 years later, dude, what? The game had some true enjoyers and went to mostly positive for a while, but the game's jank quickly turned most players off, leaving just a small core loyal player base. Once again, as with Kickstarter, Black Eye Games didn't quite succeed, and the budget of the game stayed low, contributing to a lack of polish. Actually, I don't know where they got the money to run an MMO from. The Kickstarter failed and the game is super cheap with no subscription or any real pay to win. What allowed you to continue development of the game despite not even reaching half of the funding of the original Kickstarter goal?
At the time, I was studying, developing Gloria Victis and freelancing to make a living. We had no external funding and we could only afford basic licenses and our first server thanks to player donations. It wasn't much, and I don't recall having any salary for myself for at least the first 2 years working on GV daily, including every weekend. We risked everything, sacrificed our entire 20s fully focusing on creating the game with almost no financial return for most of the time. But we made it.
Despite that, the development went rapidly. Massive combat changes, directional attacks, kicks, feinting, upgradable structures, the ability to make your own personal and guild coat of arms to display on your shield and flags of captured locations, another combat revamp, map expansions. Boats are still repeatedly mentioned to be an upcoming feature, yet they are still just as real as the spirit world. An entirely new playable faction to avoid a single faction dominating, and an entirely new PvP event for when you want to fight without getting looted. We'll talk about that. Easily, the vast majority of MMO players will outright not play a game if it has PvP looting. And that's fair. Most people got into MMOs designed in a way where gear is really more like a permanent character upgrade. So player looting not only requires a different mindset, it may also just not be for you. But I think Gloria Victis had a decent middle ground. Partial loot. When you die, you can get looted for as long as it takes you to respawn. The enemy gets 10 looting points to spend, and each item in your inventory is worth a certain amount of points in addition to taking a certain amount of time to loot. If the person looting gets interrupted at any point in the process, he is now full of sadness. Gear was also not very vertical, meaning the difference in power between extremely expensive gear and just okay gear isn't that large to allow for skill and build expression to make up a larger part of the outcome of fights. This also lessened the impact of losing said gear, while still allowing people to risk more if they choose to. In addition, it was decently horizontal as well, with different weapon types serving different roles entirely. Swords are versatile, axes do large overhead and shield damage, hammers are used for their ability to deal damage through plate armor, and spears for their reach and general armor penetration, though there is no getting around it. PvP is a core feature of Gloria Victis, even if there is more to do than just PvP. Everything is linked together by it. It's the glue. Most people want to be able to choose when they PvP, and there are things to do in relative and even full safety, like certain PvE events and types of gathering and crafting, but it is certainly more limited. So if you don't like PvP at all, you probably didn't like GV. The general idea from the MMO community seems to be that PvPers are a basket full of bad apples, and of course they are here too. I was one. But I feel like it is a very impulsive, knee-jerk reaction to call all of these games and its players trash. It just ignores all of the mechanics, safe areas, gear progression, and PvE-specific content, thoughtfully designed to be as fair as possible, and most of the community is actually wonderful as long as you stay out of NA. Seriously though, I don't know what's wrong with these people. It's like all of them are just stuck in their 14-year-old edge phase. Slurs are funny as fuck, man. One of the effects of a niche game community with skill-based combat is player notoriety. Your skill, your playstyle, the gear that you wear, even a single location that you frequent will become associated with you. There's this mutual respect between players, between the insults, of course. Was player notoriety a key design feature, or just a consequence of a small player base with skill-heavy combat?
Both. We wanted players to matter, but the small player count and very skill-heavy combat amplified this far more than we initially expected. I wish we could have added a king or a commander feature for each nation, chosen by players at intervals, with some abilities to trigger nationwide events and guide player activity to funnel player strengths better. The
community aspect of GV was clearly very important. It was maybe even the thing that kept the unimplemented ship from sinking. Black Eye Games seemed to notice, as they added the first guild castle, not just any castle that could be captured and lost at any time to showcase your phallic coat of arms, but a castle that would often become synonymous with your guild's name for months or even years. These castles could only be attacked in a specific time window. First, to token the castle, which opened up the same window for the main siege the next day, called a state of war, or a SOW. A castle at the top of the mountain in the middle of the map, plentiful resources and a really difficult to siege position, and underneath the mountain, a new PvPvE event. the Catacombs. All of this together with another large map expansion, which would soon allow for many more guild castles. Gloria Victis at this point in time was somewhere in the middle of a hardcore MMO with complete player freedom and a more forgiving one, but this was going to change. Slowly, as the regular updates kept coming, more and more of the map became what's called a non-loot zone, which, it do what it say on the tin. Black Eye Games noticed new players were just not really having fun getting ganked and losing their stuff. It was making people leave the game, but also, in their opinion, preventing people from fighting due to gear fear. First, non-loot zones were expanded to fit more area around the faction's capital city, then around the outer circle of the map, creating a clear distinction between the risky inner island and the more casual PvP-focused outer ring. At the same time, guild castle resources got their own walls, making it near impossible for anyone using them to get ganked. And that might sound good to some, but keep in mind there were already mostly safe areas to farm resources. Even one of the PvP events became non-loot. And eventually, the very removal of the state of war that I just introduced you to. This made the game safer for new players, gave them less quit moments, but it made the game a lot more stale for veteran players. Having no risk in fights in the outer circle, but having minimal content allowing for organic fights in the inner circle. No guild castles to fight for and have dumb guild politics over. Worse for the older player base, sure, but maybe better for a broader audience. All of this was the build-up to the biggest step Black Eye Games has made so far, 1.0, and on February 7th, 2023, it happened. The game spiked with a ton of players, far more than it could actually handle, which ended up with more servers being added. But as with any release, most of those players didn't stay. Some did, but it went almost back to baseline. The plan for casting a wider net has seemingly failed, and subsequently the ship finally sank. Maybe because they never added it. The official reason stated was funding. I don't personally believe this. How they could have developed a whole game without any funding, scrapped it, did it again, failed the Kickstarter, kept going, made few sales, kept going for damn near another decade, and then didn't have enough money right after the singular most profitable period in the game's history. I'm not blaming them or suggesting anything super shady. I just feel like it was something internal, stress, personal reasons. Maybe seeing the game go back to baseline and knowing it wouldn't be sustainable.
It was never about money. If it had been, we would have closed everything right after Siege Survival released, because it was very successful financially, and since it was single player, we no longer needed to invest in servers. Still, Gloria Victis servers were running 24/7 for almost 12 years. Everything ended at some point, and we simply couldn't handle it alone anymore. When our servers launched, I was 21 years old. And when we had to shut them down, I was almost 33, which meant I already had my own family, some of my relatives had died, and basically life had changed a lot. It's a huge chunk of life, and in an MMORPG, you must always be available and react quickly when something goes down, usually due to external reasons you can't prevent.
So what actually went wrong? Well, I don't feel like the game could have been much more friendly regarding PvP and looting without just no longer being itself. All things considered, GV was really one of the more forgiving PvP MMOs. I feel like the people that didn't like that part of the game just fundamentally don't like this subgenre of MMOs. To change this, GV would have to fully reinvent itself without any guarantee of it working. But it has been done successfully before in a very similar manner, so I don't believe that's the whole story. To me, it was the general feel of the game. Every time I've seen someone quit early on, it was because the animations felt bad, or the mechanics were clunky, or something else in line with a lack of polish. The onboarding process was also subpar, especially for such a unique MMO. Most people don't even know what directional combat is, and are not going to be happy just being tossed into a world with a bare minimum explanation. You know, if GV were just another tab target game, most people would just be able to get it, but it's not. So it needs a better tutorial. Lastly, maybe we're just out of players inside the niche. Mortal has a couple thousand, GV had a couple thousand. Maybe that's just all there is. I really don't know. As I'm writing this exact sentence, it is the middle of September 2025, and it looks like Gloria Victis might not be gone forever. After months of vague messaging about a return, it was finally confirmed. A deal was made with a new publisher. You see, the problem is, it's GameAgo. GameAgo has switched CEOs back in 2023, and has been somewhat updating their previously abandoned MMO, Rift. So maybe they've changed, right? But Well, if they have, it isn't much. All of Rift's updates are very meager, but at least they're keeping it online. Maybe GV will be focused on more, but I have no clue. That's likely copium. But you know what? I'll play. The community is a large part of what makes GV special, so as long as they're there, I'll be there. Just because it may end doesn't mean we can't have fun now, and maybe I'll even see some of you guys if you decide to try it out. This game is very special to me. I played it since I was 15 until I was like 20. The game, along with the people in it, were a really large part of my life. And if it were to get put into maintenance or turn into some pay-to-win fest, I'll be pretty fucked up, to be honest. I don't really have some cool ending to this where I say some halfway deep shit and then play some epic medieval music, but I hope you have a nice day. See ya.